Boy is no longer a boy. Boy is now a man. Not that much of a man, but a young man. A young man who sneaks away from home, tries to press circle with girls, and doesn't mind triggering Ragnarok. Throw in the fact that the entire Nordic pantheon of gods wants us dead, you can bet that there will be no shortage of broken bones, boo-boos, and animal bites. But in the wise words of the mother who left us,
we must be better.
It doesn't get much better than beating the game on the hardest difficulty without taking damage. So, grab your big box of 100 SpongeBob Band-Aids and your most expensive Canada Goose jacket, because we're going on a journey to survive Fimbulwinter and fulfill our destiny. Not even 2 minutes into the game, we get attacked by the MILF whose son got hit with the greatest father-son combo of 2018. I told her to get off of me until she finds the hack silver to afford my autograph. And then I accidentally drove my wolves into a rock. Even if I take the tiniest sliver of damage, I will have to reload my checkpoint and try again. The last thing I drove was my own sword into my own chest. So driving this sled was a bit different, but I was able to successfully avoid the rocks. Until the crazy fangirl reappeared and turned my bald white head into Rocky Road ice cream. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, ooh, he took damage. It's true, I did. But aside from having the power of a god, I also have the power to put up some text saying that damage from cutscenes that I can't control don't count. And so the no damage run continues. Mommy chokes me some more, but then I'm saved by the Tree of War. We finally get back home, but the chaos doesn't stop there. Our pet wolf Fenrir got COVID and died. I had a wet dream of my dead wife and woke up with something on my forehead. And worst of all, my boy never went to bed to get his essential 8 hours of sleep. I was appalled. I strapped my best friend to my right butt cheek and furiously searched for my boy. A bunch of these little raiders tried to get in my way, but I just used my shield and hit them with heavy attacks to turn them into ragdolls. I was even attacked by a random bear, and after getting my left arm sucked on half a dozen times, I showed him who the true apex predator was. I was able to dominate him without taking damage, but with the help of cutscenes and the Tree of War, the bear was able to get some hits on me. Good thing I have this rule. As I was about to choke this teddy bear out for the WWE Championship, I was shocked to find out that I was actually choking my boy. I helped him up, comforted him, and ran home as fast as I could before Child Protective Services could catch me. But I was too slow. Me and my boy were forced to fight off this government agency. No way in hell that I'm losing Loki to the system. I was exhausted after the crazy day we just had. So me and my boy went to bed, and after getting a solid 3 seconds of sleep, we were yet again met with some chaos. This time in the form of Thor and Odin. Surprisingly, Odin didn't want any smoke. He was like, hey, I know about your no damage challenge. How about you do a pacifist playthrough too? You don't damage me, I don't damage you. Everyone's happy. And me, being the god of war, said no, and proceeded to get my cheeks thunderclapped by Fat Thor. This fight started with a good old-fashioned fisticuffs. The only thing that was annoying is that whenever I rolled backwards to dodge this thunderclap attack, I would end up still getting hit. So I just started rolling to the side instead, and then I had no problem pressing this Humpty Dumpty against the wall. I even did him a favor by recalling my axe and giving him a free trial of my fat reduction surgery. I continued to chop away at his love handles until he got fed up and whipped out his fancy hammer. Not gonna lie, he was pretty good with that hammer. Must have been all the Bob the Builder episodes this man-child was probably watching back in Asgard. He even killed me and then resurrected me so he could kill me some more. Again, this damage was because of the cutscene, but it's okay because I was actually able to heal using my Rage of Sparta. In typical anime fashion, we clashed our weapons and talked about our past. We even made a pretty Christmas tree by accident. At this point, I was familiar with all of his moves and had no problem rocking him around this Christmas tree. Thor said that Odin had plans for my boy, and I Detroit smashed his front tooth in response. He flew away to get some new dentures as I ran back home to my boy.
Are you hurt?
Thank God he wasn't. Otherwise, that would have failed the no damage challenge. I grabbed my dusty, trusty Blades of Chaos and warmed them up on some nice raider flesh. This is where I learned that fighting a singular god of thunder is easier than fighting a horde of weaker enemies. It's easy to get overwhelmed and have some random enemy give you a little love tap in the back to do damage and force you to restart the checkpoint. After getting comfortable with dodging and using the environment to insta-kill my enemies, me and my boy continued our search for some answers. We ran into Rudolph the murderous reindeer, and after repeatedly bonking it in the nose with our Blades of Chaos, we were able to give it a taste of its own bow. Eventually, we found a giant shrine that showed us the prophecy of Ragnarok, including Tyr, the Nordic god of war, leading the armies against Odin. So we set off to find Tyr in Svartalheim, the realm of the dwarves. But first, we met up with our two favorite dwarves, Sindri and Brock, and upgraded our gear. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Stonewall shield. I know that there are other shields that I can use to parry and show off my Dark Souls skills, but I'd rather be less risky and just slow things down and block attacks, especially against these really aggressive and fast enemies that I call Wolverines. These guys can instantly close the distance on you and scratch you up like your cousin's cat. So I just tried to stand my ground and heavy attack them whenever I got the chance. Another good thing about the Stonewall shield is that it'll absorb damage and occasionally give me an AoE stun attack to give me some space. And of course, I always have my boy with me to help stomp these Wolverines. There's also these enemies that I call spitters that spit poison at you from a distance, which is not that bad, but pair them up with Wolverines and you got yourself a mosh pit of disaster. This is where I learned the legendary technique of spamming my axe throw like a pussy until everything dies. Listen, I'm the god of war, and wars are won with strategy. We work smarter, not harder in these streets. After riding the pain train for a couple of stops, we ran into our first Drekkie, aka the bootleg Thor fight. I dodged his lightning, blocked his attacks, and cracked his teeth just like I did with Thor. After some father-son choreography, me and my boy commando knifed this Drekkie's cranium. Then we went into some mines and found Tyr's prison, until we were interrupted by other bald white men. Now these guys can inflict Bifrost on you, which will basically increase the damage you take on the next hit. For this challenge, I will not count Bifrost as taking damage, especially since it can go away over time, but if I get hit afterwards, then I gotta reload. I showed everyone that I was the best baldy in the realm. Then I freed Tyr, and was shocked to find out that he was also doing a challenge run, a pacifist playthrough, because he refuses to hurt anyone anymore. I was kinda pissed. I went through all this stress trying to save Tyr without taking damage, just to pretty much receive an 8'5" Nordic nun. No wonder my boy snuck away from home to do things his own way. He is a lot more swift and smooth at fighting than I am, and he also has this neat little trick where you can summon the almighty world serpent for some advice. The snake mentioned a place called Ironwood, which was a paradise for giants. My boy even had the balls to visit Freya, who so wanted him dead, to try and seek forgiveness. He actually got her to consider it a bit, but she just needed a bit more time and space. And even if something bad were to really happen, my boy had Sindri and his unlimited stock of Molotovs at his side.
Atreus, where have you been?
Peeing?
I had no idea he was lying straight to my face, but it's okay, because I was a lot worse when I was his age. Anyway, our next stop is Alfheim, the realm of the elves, to find the shrine of Groa, the knowledge keeper. As soon as we stepped foot in that realm, we were constantly getting attacked by light elves. I'm starting to think that the dark elves were the good ones. This realm just fed my addiction of axe throwing even further, because there were these walls that I can ricochet my axe off of and deal major damage. Eventually we found Groa's shrine, and again Ironwood was mentioned. It also showed Ragnarok and Tyr leading the armies, but I have no idea how this pansy is gonna fulfill his role. On our way out, we got attacked by this light elf named Alva, and I absolutely violated her personal space. This is the fight where I fell in love with the spin attack for closing space, applying pressure, and building frost damage. I was such a pain in the neck for Alva that I was chased out of the entire realm. Slaughtering light elves can really build an appetite, so I grabbed some dinner with my boy. But when my boy went to sleep, he somehow woke up in Ironwood, that paradise that he was constantly being told about. I personally wouldn't call this paradise, but I can definitely see why my boy would think so.
I'm Angrboda.
Like, he's really pulling out all the combos and becoming an alpha just to protect his little kitten. And what does she do in return? She gives him her secret collection of Bakugan, which actually contain the souls of all the dead giants. Now that's what I call a trade. But speaking of souls, Angrboda's weird grandma is stealing the souls of all the animals in this realm. So they enter her shed Little Nightmare style, give one of the giant souls to this snake, and square up with the grandma and her mystical crockpot. My boy jumps from platform to dodge her attacks and shoots her crockpot to overheat it. He even gets full on slapped by this giant and doesn't take any damage. Eventually, he destroys her crockpot and releases all of the souls stored in it. Angrboda was sad that she had to leave her grandma like this, so my boy cheered her up by challenging her to a little race. She was grateful for everything my boy did. And just when he was about to receive his ultimate reward from Angrboda, he woke back up not in Sindri's house, but in our own house swarmed with Hellwalkers. My boy had no problem dealing with them, but he had many problems dealing with me.
What were you thinking?
I was so angry that I was about to whip out the belt of chaos on him, but I technically already choked him earlier, so I stopped myself. Instead, I channeled my anger towards this random Valkyrie that wanted a piece of me and my chicken gyro. She must not have heard about what I did to Alva, because I gave her the same exact treatment. The power of cutscenes allowed her to shoot a few arrows into my titties of war, but rage and anger is always the answer to our problems. Right when I was about to finish her, I recognized the smell of her perfume. It smelled like revenge and a dead son. It was Freya. She had every reason to kill me, but she didn't. The Sisters of Fate must have been on my side. Since my boy wanted to run off and be a lover boy, I grounded him and ran off with a girl of my own to go to her home realm of Vanheim. Now let me tell you, if I wasn't here to help break Freya's curse, I would have never went to this godforsaken realm. I thought the Wolverines and Spitters in Svartalheim were bad, but all the dogs, werewolves, and other weird animals in Vanheim were way worse. Even the frickin' plants in this realm wanted me dead. On the bright side, we were able to meet Freya's brother, Freyr, whose only flaw was his passion for using dwarves as piñatas. Remember when I said that we work smarter, not harder? Working harder would have meant fighting this forest ancient head-on and getting hit with OP chest beams. Working smarter meant using the Tree of War as cover and killing the ancient in record time. Even Wilson Fisk over here didn't stand a chance. Freya liked watching how I dealt with these bosses so much that she had to join me for the next one. Nidhogg. This boss made me feel like I was playing Monster Hunter, but nonetheless, all I did was block and dodge his flurry of intergalactic abilities until there was an opening to spam some spin attacks. But for the first time, someone resisted my pressure, but Bae was way ahead of him. She even used her dirty little sigils to amplify my attacks. Eventually, we were able to bring Nidhogg down, and he started to run away to avoid getting finished by our boyfriend-girlfriend combo, but we told him to calm down and to not lose his head over it. Freya was able to break her curse, and now she's able to travel to all the other realms again. She reunited with her brother, and I was able to meet this beautiful dwarf named Ludfa. I say this because the armor that I got from her made this challenge so much easier. It allowed me to inflict poison on enemies through melee attacks and blocking. This lowers the enemies' level by 1, making them so much easier to kill. I was in such a good mood, but then I had to go back home and deal with some teenage hormones.
The truth is, you're being a complete asshole!
He even had the audacity to turn into a bear and body Sindri. That's when I let out the loudest that I've ever said. He ended up somewhere in Midgard and instantly got stabbed by a Hellwalker. Now that's what I call karma, boy. But seriously, some of these Hellwalkers are the fastest attackers I've ever seen. He even ran into some creepy witches in the forest. Life is really scary for my boy right now. So what does he do? He runs away to Odin to get some answers. The road to Asgard was not easy, but I trained my boy well. I was very proud to see him climb over this giant wall to the city, but if he thought that I was giving him a rough time, then having to deal with an actual bully was an eye-opener. And it wasn't just any bully. It was a god bully with foresight named Heimdall. You know it's bad when the walking Big Mac has to save you. Odin gave him a tour and even gave him a room right next to Thor's daughter Thrud and Thor's wife Sif. My boy is itching to press that circle button right now. Odin even gives him a little self-aware sword named Ingrid. My boy finds out that Odin wants to rebuild this mask that'll give him infinite knowledge. So he agrees to help him because maybe he can get some answers for himself. Him and Thor wreak havoc in Muspelheim to search for pieces of the mask, while me and Freya wreak havoc in Midgard to search for my boy. We run into a frost phantom, but all of my axe throwing and dodging skills have prepared me for this very moment. After giving that phantom a little hug, I entered one of the most annoying parts of this challenge. Me and Freya had to fight through many different hallucinations involving some dialogue from the past and hordes of weak but aggressive enemies. This is where I was especially grateful for the Stonewall Shield, because I could just block attacks, charge my shield, and stun everyone around me. I just had to survive until the dialogue ended. I even got jumped by an enemy at the very last second, but I was saved by the bell. One of the hallucinations was filled with Hellwalkers that can stab you really fast, witches that polluted the ground with poison, and those floating eyes that can kamikaze you. I was doing a really good job at one point, and I almost cried when a random Valkyrie came out of nowhere and used my bald head as a mop. But thankfully, that was only part of a cutscene. The last hallucination had me using only my fists, but thanks to Ludfa's armor, I was able to poison and melt these enemies. After all this torture, we were rewarded with a Kelpie that we used to meet the Norns. These ugly women living in a spaghetti house who mocked us, but told us that Heimdall is going to kill my boy. So we ran back to Sindri and Brock to ask for a weapon that we can use to defeat Heimdall with. Sindri went into a secret vault like this was Gringotts' wizarding bank and whipped out a ring that can multiply itself called Dropnir. We went back to the Svartalheim mines to find more crafting materials, but this place was crawling with disgusting creatures. It took me too many tries to defeat these two Chunguses in this tight cellar, but with the help of alcohol and my blades of chaos, we were able to bring them to their demise. Eventually, we met the Lady of the Forge, who was this mermaid that Brock had a crush on, and with her help, we were able to combine Dropnir, some resources, and my Blood of War to create the Dropnir Spear. A spear that can infinitely multiply. This was the perfect throwing weapon for me. I even turned these two ogres into pincushions and pit them against each other. Life is good. I even demolished this berserker who happened to be in my way. But when I got home, I still had no idea how to reunite with my boy. As I dreamt about my wife to ask her for some guidance, my boy and Thrud were fighting through literal hell to search for more pieces of the mask. They showed everyone that the children of gods were not to be messed with until they made the stupid mistake of freeing the giant wolf in hell that can tear through all the realms and cause pandemonium. Kids only return home when they mess up and need their parents to fix their mistakes, and my boy was no different. It wasn't the most peaceful reunion, but I was finally able to get my boy back. Remember how I said Hellwalkers were some of the fastest attackers? You can imagine how much of a pain it was to survive this section. But with everyone's help, except this waste of godly organs with a shield, we were able to get through it all.
Atreus.
I actually almost forgot his name. Me and Atreus brought hell to these Hellwalkers and then squared up with Garm. Similar to Nidhogg, I just avoided his attacks until there was an opening. Occasionally, I froze his big boy leash, trained him to play dead, and then gave him some cavities with my poison. And of course, the big boy started using his leash against me. It took some time to learn the timing for the dodge, but eventually I was able to give this big boy an anti-pedicure. He got so mad that I ruined his teeth and nails that he went all feral on me, and I was forced to put him down. But on our way out, he was somehow still alive. I gave him a full serving of Dropnir spears, and Atreus came up with a brilliant plan of taking our old pet Fenrir's soul, launching it up and over to Garm, and putting it into this stronger wolf body. Needless to say, the plan was a success. The things me and Atreus can do is bananas. I even brought him to Vanheim to help save Freya, and we casually destroyed 2 Dreki. And that's when I ran into Heimdall and his pet tiger. With the help of my Dropnir spear, his tiger stood no chance. As for Heimdall himself, the spear was also able to stun him, but I still couldn't land a good hit. I think I can.
You actually hit me!
Well, would you look at that. The only annoying thing about Heimdall is this fast unblockable move that kept catching me off guard. I kept trying to roll backwards to dodge it, but I quickly learned my lesson. And so did Heimdall. I was gonna spare him, but he just had to keep running his dirty little mouth and threatening my boy Atreus. Then, he turned on the LED gamer lights on his right arm and started charging at me like a madman. This idiot with all his foresight couldn't figure out that him wildly smacking my shield was poisoning him and killing him. I was forced to put him out of his misery, and I yoinked Gallahorn, the horn that'll sound the start of Ragnarok. Then I picked up Freya and ran away with him like he was a football and I was a wide receiver at the Super Bowl. After fixing all of Atreus' mistakes, I was shocked to hear that he still wanted to return to Asgard, especially after what I just did to Heimdall. But I trust him. He's grown into a strong warrior. Like, he's over here starting bar fights with Thor in Asgard now. Some people even say that he resembles me a lot more. After Thor sobers up, him and Atreus return to Hell to finally find that last piece of the mask. Atreus somehow bit this frost ancient so much that he spontaneously combusted, and then he was able to complete the mask. Suddenly, Odin came out of nowhere and jumped at him like how I jumped at the sight of Sif. But he used a spell that Sindri taught him to teleport himself back to us. We went back home with the mask, and Tyr, being a complete waste of space for this entire journey, started talking a lot all of a sudden. Brock noticed this, so he called him out, but then...
You never shut up!
Odin was Tyr the whole time? Or Tyr was Odin the whole time? I'm not sure, but what I am sure about is that my aim is true, because I saved the mask with my spear. Like, did you see that throw? That was a throw of chaos right there. Another thing I'm sure of is that we're going to war. Hell, even Sindri was about to go to war on his own. But first, we have to gather some forces. Freyr will gather the elves, Freya will gather the Valkyries in Vanheim, and Sindri will gather the dwarves. Me and Atreus went to Muspelheim to ask for the help of a fire giant named Surtur, and his response was,
Go away.
we were forced to fight 2 fire ancients in this small arena polluted with a bunch of other enemies, which was kinda messy, but thankfully neither of the ancients had chest beams, otherwise they would have fried us. We asked Surtur for help again, and he still told us no. But after turning around, he caught a glimpse of my blades of chaos and suddenly changed his mind. My blades are just too sexy to resist, man. He helped me infuse the blades of chaos with the spark of the world. Then he told me to stab him in the heart to turn him into Ragnarok himself. Now all we have to do is go back home and blow Galahorn to start the war. But all of a sudden, 2 Valkyries came out of nowhere. They were giving me and Atreus a tough time at first, but after splitting them up and bringing the fight to them, we pulled off the greatest father-son combo of 2022.
Get away from him!
Tomorrow, we go to war. Tomorrow, I could die. So, I told Atreus one last bedtime story, dreamt of my wife one more time, and then I blew Galahorn with all of the air that my lungs of war could hold and charged into battle. Right off the bat, I ran into 2 enemies that used to be bosses, and I had to fight them in this tiny arena. It doesn't help that there's random explosions from the war happening around us. The knight was gonna take a while to kill, so I wanted to kill the ogre first, but the knight just wouldn't let me breathe. So I just kept telling myself, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and then boom, I was able to stun the ogre and ride him around until everything was dead. I had no idea he did that much damage, but I'll take it. Then I got attacked by an enemy riding a tiger. I knew that I could just knock the rider off with my axe and then execute the tiger later, but these guys just stood around me until I was done and then gave me a little love tap in the back for some damage. It took me a bunch of tries, but I was finally able to kill everyone, and then this random ass dragon swept the area with fire and burned me. I was so pissed. Time after time, he will do the same thing and force me to reload. Then, after I calmed down and analyzed the situation, I realized that I could just block the fire with my shield. I felt like an idiot, but I was an idiot of war. So I shook it off, threw a spear under the dragon, and told him to torment someone else. Eventually, we got Thrud to join us after she realized Odin didn't care about her or her family, and we steamrolled Odin's forces. But when Thor saw us with Thrud, he grabbed my head like it was the last egg at the supermarket and started beating me up with no questions asked. But the difference between me and Thor is that I gained a lot of new toys and abilities since we last fought, and Thor just got a bit more drunk. I threw his hammer back at him, gave him some liposuction, and he blew me away like a feather. That was the last time I made that mistake. I picked him up and threw him down like this was WrestleMania, tried to use his own hammer against him, took a bit of damage, and then I showed him my brand new spear. Thor looked like a mess after inflicting poison and frost on top of all of his lightning. We had one more Naruto Sasuke clash, and then we just started going at it like pure cavemen. Eventually, I subdued him, and I could have killed him if I really wanted to, but
We must be better.
But Odin, man, this guy is an old sack of scum. Me and Atreus hit him with everything we got. His moves were pretty predictable, and the only thing that hit me was this move, because I didn't realize I could just jump to other platforms to dodge it. But after I figured that out, it was over for him. He somehow restrained us with some retirement home magic, but Freya brought some BDSM bondage tools of her own. She choked her ex-husband like the good old days, and he got so nostalgic that he was brought to his knees. Unfortunately, he brought us with him. At this point, Odin gave Atreus a chance to put on the mask and gain infinite knowledge, but instead he broke the mask so nobody could ever get corrupted, and Odin let out his strongest geriatric scream. Now we had Freya to help us clap this old man's cheeks. I gave him a hug, did a little tango. Freya strapped him down so he can watch us give his ravens a little handshake. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but whatever he just did was definitely new. New and super annoying. Aside from the elemental shield around him, Odin kept polluting the floor with fire, poison, and frost. Then he would just keep spamming all of his moves, giving us a very small window to run up and do some damage. I retried this phase so many times that I learned a combo that I can do starting from the black loading screen, which will remove his fire shield. It's random which shield he'll put up next, but when he puts up the light shield like this, it's super easy to take down with the Dropnir spear. After that, I just kept up the pressure and tried my best not to accidentally roll into something nasty on the ground that can hurt me. He puts up one more shield when he's about to die, and I made sure to use up all of my rage to melt it. The arena looked like a minefield towards the end, but I made sure to invade his safe space and perform the greatest father-son stepmom combo of 2022. And Sindri became a Sith. It was finally over. The Valkyries are free from Odin's leadership, Thor's family is free from Odin's emotional abuse, and Freya has found a new family. Atreus has grown into a warrior worthy of his name, and I went from being a god that everyone feared to one that everyone loves. Is this the end of my journey? I do not know. But what I do know is that it was possible to do it without taking damage.